Ladies and gentlemen, every one of us moves through life carrying an inner world that shapes how we see, how we act, and how we interpret everything around us. We often believe that our struggles come from circumstances outside of us, yet so much of what we experience is influenced by what happens within. When the mind becomes tangled in worry, confusion, or unresolved emotion, life appears heavier and more complicated than it truly is. But the moment we begin to understand the quiet power of our inner world, its fears, its strengths, and its unspoken desires, we unlock a deeper way of living. Today, I invite you to explore the idea that the alignment we seek in the outer world begins with balance inside ourselves. When the inner world steadies, life unfolds with a clarity and flow that once felt out of reach. Worry is a projection of the unconscious, not a reflection of reality. It rises quietly from the depths of the mind, long before the conscious self even has a chance to understand what is happening. Most people believe they worry because of external circumstances, because situations are uncertain, or because the future cannot be fully controlled. But beneath that surface explanation, there is a far more intricate process unfolding. The roots of worry do not originate from the world outside. They come from the unseen territories within the psyche. These hidden layers store forgotten memories, unresolved fears, old emotional wounds, and unprocessed experiences. When something in the present moment resembles, even slightly, a past discomfort or a buried fear, the unconscious reacts instantly, sending signals upward in the form of worry. It is less about what is happening and more about what your inner world remembers. This is why two people can face the same situation, yet one feels calm while the other battles intense anxiety. The difference is not in the event itself. It lies in what the mind projects onto it. The unconscious carries stories you may not even know you are carrying. These stories shape the shadows of expectation and fear. When worry appears, it is often the mind replaying these internal stories rather than responding to the reality in front of you. The danger feels real because the emotion is real, but the source of that emotion is usually internal. The external world simply triggers what already existed inside. Worry acts like a lens that distorts the world. Instead of seeing things as they are, you see them through the filter of unresolved fears and suppressed emotions. This is why worry often exaggerates problems or imagines outcomes that never come to pass. The mind, influenced by the unconscious, begins to create possibilities that feel threatening even when nothing harmful is actually happening. It is the psyche trying to protect itself from pain it has not yet understood or processed. Worry, in this sense, is a form of anticipation, not of real events, but of emotional echoes from within. When individuals do not recognize the role of the unconscious, they assume that their worries are logical, practical, and grounded. But if you pause and observe the nature of most worries, you will notice that they are vague, repetitive, or based on imagined future scenarios. They lack evidence yet feel compelling. They highlight dangers that rarely occur, yet take up a significant amount of mental space. This is not because the world is constantly threatening. It is because the unconscious is constantly active, projecting its unexpressed content onto the stage of the future. It paints the unknown with colors borrowed from past experiences. It anticipates pain by predicting it everywhere. To understand worry deeply, one must understand that the mind is divided between what we know about ourselves and what we have not yet discovered. The conscious mind may believe everything is fine, but the unconscious may hold tension, unresolved fears, or beliefs formed long ago. These hidden forces operate quietly but powerfully. They shape reactions, influence decisions, and color perceptions without ever revealing their presence directly. When the unconscious feels threatened, even symbolically, it sends signals upward, and the conscious mind interprets those signals as worry. This is why worry often feels out of proportion. The emotional intensity does not match the situation. You may find yourself fearing outcomes that are unlikely, overthinking simple choices, or imagining problems before they exist. The conscious mind tries to rationalize these feelings, but the origin lies in deeper layers that logic cannot easily reach. Worry is the mind's attempt to make sense of inner turbulence by projecting it onto the outer world. It creates scenarios that mirror the internal conflict, giving shape to feelings that otherwise have no form. When you begin to recognize worry as a projection rather than a fact, your relationship with it changes. Instead of believing every anxious thought, you begin to question it. Instead of assuming the world is dangerous, you consider the possibility that fear is coming from within. This awareness does not eliminate worry instantly, but it loosens its grip. You no longer mistake internal echoes for external threats. You begin to notice how often your mind imagines danger simply because something inside you remains unsettled. Understanding this creates space between the thought and your reaction, space between fear and belief, space where clarity can finally breathe. In this way, worry teaches something profound. The world outside may trigger discomfort, but it does not create the patterns of fear that live within. Those patterns are formed internally, shaped by memory, shaped by experience, shaped by emotions you may have forgotten, but your mind has not. Worry is not an enemy, it is a signal, a message from the unconscious reminding you that something inside remains unresolved. When seen this way, it becomes not just a burden, but a doorway toward deeper self-awareness. Letting go of worry awakens clarity, intuition, and inner strength. When the mind releases the constant tension of anticipating what might go wrong, a remarkable shift begins inside. Worry acts like a fog that settles over perception, making every decision feel heavier and every possibility feel uncertain. It scatters attention and divides the mind, pulling it in multiple directions at once. A worried mind is endlessly busy, yet rarely productive. It spends its energy analyzing shadows rather than observing reality. But when that weight is lifted, when even a small portion of that mental strain is allowed to dissolve, the mind begins to regain its natural rhythm, its natural intelligence, and its natural connection to the deeper layers within. Clarity is the first gift that emerges from letting go. Without the noise of constant apprehension, the mind begins to see situations as they are, rather than through the lens of fear. Options that once looked complicated become simpler, and choices that felt overwhelming become more obvious. Clarity is not simply thinking more, it is thinking more cleanly. It is the ability to focus on what matters without being distracted by imagined outcomes. When worry fades, even briefly, the mind returns to the moment instead of being trapped in the future. And in that present moment, awareness, understanding becomes sharper. Solutions that were hidden behind layers of doubt begin to reveal themselves. The mind is no longer busy fighting itself, so it can finally direct its energy toward insight. Intuition awakens next, rising from a deeper, quieter part of the self. Worry tends to suffocate intuition because intuition speaks softly, while fear speaks loudly. A worried mind is filled with noise, inner arguments, predictions, doubts, rehearsed scenarios, and this noise drowns the subtle inner voice that often knows the right direction long before the conscious mind does. But when the noise settles, when the inner storm begins to calm, intuition has space to be heard again. It emerges not as dramatic revelations, but as a gentle guiding sense, a feeling that something is right, or something is wrong, or something requires patience instead of rush. Intuition becomes clearer when fear loosens its grip, because intuition does not arise from fear. It arises from a deeper wisdom, one that knows how to navigate life without needing constant guarantees. This intuitive sense is not logical in the traditional way, yet it has an uncanny accuracy. It reveals patterns that the analytical mind cannot detect and offers direction when reason alone feels insufficient. By letting go of worry, the mind creates an opening for this inner compass to activate. Intuition is not a gift reserved for a select few. It is a natural capacity that every person has, but it requires space, silence, and trust to function. Trust cannot grow in the presence of constant worry, but it thrives in the atmosphere of mental calm. From this growing clarity and intuition, inner strength emerges naturally. Strength does not appear only in moments of crisis. It is built quietly in the spaces where fear no longer dominates your inner world. When a person stops worrying excessively, they begin to realize that they are capable of facing whatever comes. Their confidence becomes grounded, not in the belief that life will always be easy, but in the understanding that they have the resilience to endure difficulty. Inner strength develops when the mind stops wasting energy on invented catastrophes and instead invests that energy in the present moment. What was once consumed by fear becomes available for courage. Strength is not always loud. Often it is a quiet steadiness, a sense of stability that remains even when circumstances shift. It comes from knowing that you can survive uncertainty without collapsing into panic. It grows each time you choose calmness over chaos, presence over projection, and understanding over assumption. Letting go of worry does not make you passive. It makes you more centered, more grounded, and more prepared to act when action is needed. As clarity sharpens, intuition deepens, and strength stabilizes, a person's entire orientation toward life begins to change. Instead of reacting from fear, they respond from awareness. Instead of overthinking, they observe. Instead of doubting every step, they begin to trust their path. This shift is subtle at first, but profound in effect. The mind becomes an ally instead of an adversary. Thoughts become clearer, emotions become less overwhelming, and decisions become more aligned with inner truth rather than external pressure. Letting go of worry does not mean ignoring challenges or pretending life is always smooth. It means choosing not to carry unnecessary fears into every moment. It means recognizing that inner balance is more powerful than external certainty. And as the weight of worry lifts, even slightly, the mind rediscovers its natural clarity, reconnects with intuition, and uncovers the strength that was always there, waiting beneath the surface. Life aligns naturally when the inner world becomes balanced. The events around us may appear chaotic, unpredictable, and sometimes indifferent to what we want. Yet how we experience those events depends greatly on the state of our inner landscape. When the mind is scattered, burdened with unprocessed emotions, or driven by conflicting desires, the outer world feels equally fragmented. It seems as though everything is happening against us. Small challenges become exaggerated, opportunities feel out of reach, and even simple decisions create discomfort. But this outer disorder is often a mirror of the inner condition. A mind in conflict sees conflict everywhere. A heart carrying unresolved tension perceives tension in the world, and a person who feels divided inside naturally experiences life as if it is pulling them in several directions at once. Balance within does not mean perfection or the complete absence of difficulty. Rather, it is the alignment of thoughts, emotions, and intentions so they move in the same direction instead of competing with one another. When this alignment begins to form inside, the outer world seems to respond differently. Situations that once felt heavy become easier to manage, interactions that once felt draining become more fluid, and pathways that once appeared confusing suddenly reveal their shape. It is not that life has changed its rhythm, it is that you have changed the way you stand within it. A balanced inner world allows you to navigate circumstances with steadiness rather than resistance. Inner balance creates a sense of psychological clarity. When the noise within quiets, you notice patterns that previously went unseen. You begin to understand why certain situations repeat or why certain people trigger specific emotions. You become more aware of the difference between genuine obstacles and those produced by your own projections. This self-awareness allows you to approach life with a clearer mind, reducing unnecessary complications that arise from misunderstanding your own needs or fears. Life begins to feel more manageable because your interpretation of life becomes more grounded. When we learn to listen to the quiet movements within us, when we allow clarity to rise, intuition to guide, and balance to take shape, life responds in ways that feel almost effortless. Challenges remain, but they no longer consume us. Uncertainty still exists, but it no longer defines us. The world around us begins to mirror the harmony we cultivate inside. This is the quiet strength of an aligned inner world. As you move forward, may you carry with you the understanding that the path outside becomes clearer the moment the path within becomes calm, and may that balance guide you toward choices, opportunities, and moments that reflect the very best of who you are becoming.